Hey crafty people, welcome back to my channel, and in case you're new here, I'm Sarah, also known as Craft Nerd because I'm a nerd who loves to craft. I do paper crafting, card making, junk journaling, and mixed media art. Let's get crafting! Alright, sorry about the glare, but plastic and plastic. So what I'm going to be working on is creating a birthday card for my dad's cousin's partner. I got a text from my cousin, who's technically, I think, a second cousin, because she's my dad's cousin's youngest, that her uncle was looking to get cards sent for his partners who is celebrating a milestone birthday soonish. I'm not entirely sure when exactly his birthday is. I just know I got the text, and so I told her, hey, I'd make a card. And then I asked her, okay, give me some idea of his interests, because when I make cards, I like to do cards geared towards the person. So let me stamp while I'm talking. And so they have cats, and he likes to knit and crochet. So I am planning on doing a scene involving kitty cats, knitting, and a birthday celebration all at once, because why not? And my tip for you, if you like to do this type of card, is to shop your stash. I have pulled out a bunch of different stamp sets from Fawn. I really like Fawn stamps for creating these types of cards because they're all kind of scaled to go together. And I am stamping on Express It paper with Memento dye-based ink because I am going to be coloring these with my Copic markers. And I've pulled out a couple everyday stamp sets, like that are, you know, not necessarily for a holiday. A bunch of, I've got a Halloween stamp set because these kitty cats are a Halloween stamp set. I think I want this one from this set. Let's stamp this guy too, just in case. So yeah, I'm gonna stamp a bunch of stamps out, probably more than I'm gonna end up using in the scene on the card. But the idea is all right, I completely lost my train of thought there. Oh, I know where I was going. So when I say shop your stash, look through and figure out what stamps you have that'll help you build the scene. So like I've got kitty cats from a everyday stamp set. This is from the, I think Meow, you doin' and keep on swimming, because I think the kitty cat looking up is like staring at the table, which gets a fishbowl, which is in another CD case. These cats are from a Halloween stamp set. Stamp a couple of those. And then I've got a bunch of stamps, like I'm gonna do the couch stamp, which is from, I think Furry and Bright is the stamp set, maybe? Not Penguin Party. No, it might be Window Scene Winter, because, yeah. So when I go to create a stamped scene, I go through my stash of stamps and try and figure out what stamps I have that are going to work to create the scene I'm looking to create. Oh yeah, and I've got to remember with some of these, the thickness of the stamps are different. They've, I think, changed how they are making stamps. So some of the newer ones I think are thinner than the older Fawn stamps. So if you're using a MISTI to stamp, keep that in mind, because yeah, I've had some issues where I'm like, wait, why is this not stamping right? And then I realized, oh, it's because some of the stamps I stuck on are smaller or skinnier than the others, in which case they won't all stamp. And I'm using my MISTI because with a dye-based ink and a clear stamp, sometimes you don't always get a perfect image, and so I really love having my Misty so that I can restamp. It has made stamping with Memento ink so much easier. And the reason I'm using Memento ink is because like a VersaFine or VersaFine Claire are pigment ink. When you put alcohol ink markers to a pigment ink, you are going to end up having your inks run together and make a mess. And it's likely to ruin the nib of your marker because you're going to end up getting the stamp ink onto your marker. So if you're coloring with Copics, you need to use a dye-based ink to avoid any such problems. I'm going to stamp our ball of yarn a couple times. So that I can have a colorful array of yarn balls. I probably should stamp the little swirly thing a few more times too. So I have a feeling I'm gonna want to do a voiceover on this sucker because such a mess in my brain here. I can't think and stamp at the same time. And I'm pulling out the cake from, this is Teariffic Day and the Teariffic Day add-on. I don't remember which. I think the cakes are part of the main stamp set. I'll leave a list of all the stamps I'm using down below. Those are super sticky. So I need to readjust my magnet locations to avoid that issue again. So yeah, I may end up not using some of the stuff I stamp, but this gives me an opportunity to lay it all out on a card base and figure out what's gonna work and what's not gonna work, and then I don't have to usually go back and stamp more stuff. Now, okay, I've got everybody stamped and I'm gonna start coloring these cute kitties. I'm going to start by doing this one in grays. So I've grabbed C0, C1, C3, and C5. And I'm going to start by laying a base of C0 over the whole piece. I'm going to darken it up with some C3 along the edges. I'm going to blend that with C1. And I want to keep that belly light, so I'm going to come back in with C0. Make sure everything's nice and smooth. Now I'm going to add stripes, and I'm going to use C5 for that. So I'm going to do little scribbly pointed stripe on the top of his head. And then a couple on the sides of his face. So I'm just kind of doing it in a triangular kind of pattern. And I'll do one on his back. And let's stripe the tail, so a little scribbly at the end. Just kind of scribbling the marker along. And just to smooth those areas out, I'm gonna go over them with C1. For inside the ears and the nose, I tend to like to use either R11 or RV10. So I'm going to grab that, and I've grabbed R11. I'm just going to do kind of a triangle in the ear. Pink nose. For this little guy, we're going to go with an orange stripe tabby, and I have grabbed YR20, YR12, E51, E53, and E97. So I'm going to start with the YR20 and just give it a good coating, good coloring all around as my base. And this is generally how I like to color stuff with my Copic markers, is I start by giving a base coating of my lightest color. I find it just helps the ink move better when I do that. Then I'm gonna add, we're gonna go YR12 all around to get it a little bit more orange than peach. Blend with the 20. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull some ink off of the darker pen with my lighter pen to help get my blend going. There's still some of the darker ink on the pen, just wipe it off on a scratch piece of paper and it'll clean off any of that. I think I'm going to go over the whole thing with Y51 just to kind of get it more brownish orange, you know, like more of a natural color, because it's still looking very peachy to me. And we want an orange cat, not a peach cat. Then I'm going to use the YR97 and the YR12 to do stripes, like I did with the gray cat. So I did the 97 first. I'm going to come in with the 12 to get it a little bit more color. This needs to be a little wider at the base. And I think I'm actually happy with that. So I'm just going to come in again with the R11 for nose and ears. And this one I'm just going to do a solid color. And I'm going with warm grays. So I've got W0, W3, and W5. So I did W0 all over. I'm going to come in and add a little bit of W5 in some strategic spots. I can talk, really, I can. I don't worry too much about where I'm putting my shadows. Like, I try and go in spots where I think a natural shadow is going to fall, but I'm not overly concerned about where the light source is. These animals are not like super realistic, so I just try and get them to look good. They're also kind of small, making it kind of hard to be super detailed with light and shadow. And I'm just looking to blend out any harsh lines I've got. And again, my R7 or R11. His nose is a little darker because I kind of got a little carried away with my gray. This one I kind of want to do a calico. So I'm going to do a base coat of C0. For the white, because once we start adding other colors, the C0 is so light, it essentially is adding a base of white, or will look like, you know, it's not going to look like it's gray so much once it starts drying, because it dries lighter than it is. All right, for some orange spots, I'm going to use the YR12 and E97. I think I want to do a little, and I'm just going to kind of do irregular blobs. I'm going to do C5, but I'm probably also going to come in with some C7 and darken the 5 up even more to get closer to that black look you have on calicos. So again, just kind of doing irregular little blobby shapes. And I think that's good. I think I'm going to stop with that there, and let's just add our R11 for ears and nose. And we'll call that one good. Okay, so I decided I'm going to do this one Himalayan Persian coloring style, so I figured I'd show you that coloring as well, since it's a little different than the other ones that I did. And I'm going to start with E000 and just do base coat. Now I'm going with E70, and again, an all over coating of that. I'm gonna grab E74 because Himalayan Persians have, you know, brown tipped like ears, the tip of their tails, their paws, and kind of around their faces. And I'm actually gonna grab E79 to darken those, and I'm just gonna, as I did before, touch the lighter marker to the darker marker and pull in the color. And I'm gonna come in, add a few shadowy spots with E71, and then go over the whole thing again with E70. Just a few spots where you'd see some shadowing. Clearly needs more ink. I think my Copic markers need like a full-on go through and clean and re-ink all of the markers, but oh, that project takes like an entire 3-day weekend to do. And I just don't have the time for it. All right, so there's our little Himalayan cat. Now what I'm gonna do next, I think, is the couch. And I'm gonna grab, I really like, it's a color combo I use a lot for fall cards for this couch. And it's like a teal color. So we're going teal. BG53, BG7, BG9, BG75, and BV25. Okay, so we're not going to be using the BG75 because it needs re-inking, and I don't have a re-inker for that one yet. So I had that one out, trying to remind myself I need to order a re-inker for it, and apparently that did not work. All right, I think we'll be fine. So I'm going to start, as per usual, with my lightest color. And that's at BG53. Then I'm going to come in with the BG9. I'm going to come in with BG7 and start blending that out. Again, with the BG7, I'm gonna touch it with the BV53 just to help get our blend on. And then I'm gonna grab the BV20, oh, this is 23, I meant to grab 25. And I'm just gonna use it to knock these corners back even more, just to give that illusion of depth. And we're gonna blend that in using a little bit of 9 right over top of the grayish purpley color. Oh, and you know what? I want to do the creases. All right, now we just need to do the legs, which I'm gonna do in a brown. I'm gonna grab YR2724 and E37. So I did base in the E24, which is my lightest. The E37 is my darkest, so I did just a little bit to create the shadow that would be cast by the couch. And then I'm blending out with the E27. And I'm going to use that same color combo for my table. All right, so I don't know how well you can see. I did get outside my lines a little bit, so I'm gonna grab the Copic 0, which is the colorless blender. Now, if you're new to Copic Markers, you can't do blending with the colorless blender. It, however, will push color, so if you go outside your lines, you can push the color back inside the lines. Because yeah, it pushes the color around and doesn't really get you smooth blends if you try and blend with it. And I will say, if you're coloring with red and get outside the lines, I would not necessarily recommend using the colorless blender to push it back in, because red stains a lot. It's best to just go to ignore it, or go back in with a white pen after you're done and color over the red with a white pen. Okay, I gotta have a bit of a think about what other colors I want to use for all the pretties that are gonna go into our scene, and I'll be back. Okay, so I've grabbed a bunch of colors and I'm gonna run through what they are, and then I'm just gonna get to coloring and you can watch me do that. I grabbed YR01 and 02 to create like a peach color. For purple, I've got V12 and V17. Green, I went YG1 and YG6. And yes, I know I'm only grabbing 2 colors, but because we've got such small spaces, I think they'll work just fine. I've grabbed RV4 and 10. And then I'm gonna go with, oh, I forgot to grab the BG13 and BG32. I realized I wanted a blue, so I grabbed a B2 and a B5. And it's getting a little dark, so I'm going to grab a B00. I'm going to grab RV13 to do a pink filling on our cake. And Y21 for the vanilla part of our cake. And I'm going BG32 for the icing on our cake. We're going to go teal icing. Just going to put some C1. All right, so there's all of our bits and pieces colored. I'm gonna get these cut out and then we will work on assembly. All right, so I've got all of my pieces cut out and I've grabbed a few other things that I'm planning on using for making this card. So step one is I'm gonna figure out my card size. So I've got little templates I keep of, you know, standard card sizes that I like to use. And so this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So let's see how these things fit on that card size. And I realized this table's too tall, so we're gonna do some editing of the piece so that it fits more like a console table. And I'm thinking that this is gonna be too small of a card size. Like it's getting too squished. Oy, my dogs. So let's go 5 by 7. I think that's gonna work a little bit better, give us a little bit more room so that all of the kitties aren't like right on top of each other. Because yeah, I did do a little fiddling before I went on screen, but I wanted to show you, you know, my process for figuring these things out. This is kind of what I'm thinking layout wise. Put the presents underneath the table, which I'm going to chop the legs off so that they fit properly. And this is going to be my Knittin kitten. So I'm going to have a ball of yarn there, and I'll have edited out my attempts to doctor a stamp I already had that was a pencil into knitting needles. And what I'm just going to do is grab a piece of scrap paper in a minute, draw some knitting needles, and put them in our kitty's hand. And we'll have this one holding a piece of cake. Some more balls of yarn and give them some party hats. Get this little kitty there. You can have a party hat. And he can have a part hat. I'll add a little more string sticking out over here. And I think I'm gonna save this kitten and stick it on the inside of the card. So I'm liking this general idea for a layout, and I'm gonna just set it off to the side for a minute. And we are gonna cut down our paper. So I need to cut off, I'm taking a piece of 8.5 by 11. So I need to cut down the one side to 7, and I'm gonna cut on the 8.5 side. Just for anyone who's new to card making. And then I will cut off 1 inch from the 11 side, and that'll get me a 5 by 7 base. Now I'm gonna pull my thing back because I need to get an idea of how big of a floor I need. I think I'm gonna go for a piece of paper that is 7 by 1.5, and this is some craft cardstock, and it's going to be our floor. And I'm going to show you what I like to do for floors in a sec. And then I pulled out some paper from my stash to be the wallpaper in the background, and so that again I'm going to cut down to 7. And it's 5, but I don't need it to go the whole length because we're gonna have our floor at 1.5. So let's take off, not quite a full 1.5. This way we won't have to worry about any white showing if things don't line up exactly. And I'm actually also going to do a very skinny strip. Let's see, are you long enough? You are. So I am gonna do 1/4 inch by 7 to serve kind of as my baseboard for the transition between my wallpaper and my floor. So now that we've done all that, I am going to grab my scoreboard and my floor piece, and I am going to score every, let's start with a 1/2 inch, see how we like it, and if that works, great. I'm actually going to flip around because it's going to make my life easier to do it this way. Ooh, that I pressed a little too hard. I heard some ribbage, but it should be all right. Yeah. So I don't know how well you can see, we've now got indentations. So I'm going to grab some ink and let's go with vintage photo to start with. And I'm trying to decide whether I want to drag on the debossed side or the embossed side. Let's go this way first. You know what, actually no, I don't like all the little speckles on that. So I'm just gonna lightly drag, which will help bring out because by not pressing too hard, I'm not getting any ink in the grooves. So I may do a little dragging up. So we're giving some interest to our wood floor. All right, so let's pull over our card base. We're gonna fold it in half. And I'm like, this seems huge because I don't tend to do a lot of 5 by 7s. I do mostly 4 1/4 by 5.5. So when I do a 5 by 7, it's like, ooh, that thing's huge. All right, so there's our card base. We're gonna put our wallpaper on first. And I am just gonna use our glitter glue. There's our wallpaper, and then we're gonna add this on as our flooring. And yeah, it's gonna need a little trimming up, but we'll do that later. then this will be, we'll just glue that on. It's like a little baseboard between our wallpaper and our floor. All right, I'm gonna grab my scissors to trim off this little bit of excess that's hanging over. All right, so let's bring this back over and start our laying out again. So I'm gonna start with my couch. And it's gonna go about there. Now, I need to mark where I want to trim off the legs on my table. So I want my table to be about that big. And I want it to be in line, leg-wise, with the bottom of the couch. So my couch is going there. Whoop. Oi, you know what, let's do this. Even if that's not where it's going on the piece, I can line up better if I'm holding with one hand and marking with the other. And then we'll cut here. And so I'm gonna grab my scissors and snip that off, and snip that off. And I'm tempted to trim this down and see if I can get it. I'm wondering if I'll like it better going like this. I think we're gonna do that. I'll trim this one down and line it up over here. And let's try and get our table lined up straight-ish. Let's see if our feet are the same size. Roughly. All right, so we're gonna add a little glue. So, and now I got a shorter table. And I'm just gonna double check. I've got a little bit of white showing where it's not quite lined up perfect. So there we go, we've shortened our table. We can bring this back over. So now our table can go over here and our couch can go next to it. And I'm okay that now it's a little bit taller. Not mad at that. So let's put this down first. And I decided to try using my scan and cut to die cut these out. So I'm just gonna do a little cleanup over there. So I'm mostly happy with how the pieces turned out using the scan and cut. So I may stop buying the coordinating dies. Cause yeah, I for a while there when I was making tons of cards and running late making cards and all that, the dies were an investment worthwhile because it saved me the time of fussy cutting. But I think I may like using the scan and cut for that. All right, I think for the balloons, like that set's gonna go there. What I want to do is pop up the balloon part, but glue down the stem part. So that should add a little bit of interesting dimension. And to help with longevity, I'm going to add glue to my dots. And then I'm gonna put some glue on there. So it's going like so. So they really look like they're floating and tied down behind the cake platter. Let's put the cake platter down. But again, I'm gonna do the pop-ups for it. Where they All right, now I think I need to do the knitting needles for our kitty. So I'm gonna grab my silver pen and I'm trying to decide how long they need to be. Bring our kitty over. I'm gonna gauge. And do a little bulb at the end. I'm gonna give those a second to dry, and then I'm gonna outline them with black so that they go with everything else as well. I do want to grab, let's see. So this is a Spica clear glitter pen. I'm just gonna add some of this to the highlights on the balloons. I'm also, once we finish assembling, going to add glossy accents to the balloons to make them sparkle. Let's see, oh, we can add the presents. Oh, with all the layers, the back of them sticking up, I'm okay with that. So this kitty's, yeah, I'm gonna lift him a little, snip into between his arms a little bit more so that I can tuck our ball of yarn in better. So he's playing with a ball of yarn, and we're gonna have a string sticking off that ball of yarn. I'm gonna grab my Copic multi-liner and grab one of the thinner pens and come in and just draw an outline around the knitting needle. And I'm going to trim those out real quick. If I need to, I'll go back with the pen after I trim it out, because yeah, I think I'm going to end up cutting off most of it because I went so thin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of the thicker ones and I'm going to hold down the piece to my paper and trace around it instead of on it to see if I can just get a little bit more black on the edge of our knitting needle. There we go, we've got 2 little knitting needles for our kitty. Let's use our tweezers for sure for this. Let's put the thread underneath, which let's put glue on the thread. And then the other 2 balls of yarn can go on the floor to serve as the pile for piling up the one he's stitching from. And let's go ahead and stick our little kitten inside. Kitty goes there, and 2 finishing touches, and this will be done. I'm grabbing Stickles in Grape, and I'm gonna put those on the cake. Theoretically, I'm gonna put that on the cake. Let's find where my pin for my glue went. We're gonna first use it to hopefully unclog the Stickles. All right, there we go. Just gonna put a little dot. So let's just add a little sparkle to the cake. And then I'm gonna grab Glossy Accents. Let's see if this is clogged. Probably, yes. I'm just gonna hold this up to my face to make sure I don't have any bubbles. I've got 1 or 2, so I'm gonna take a pin and possibly do it so you can see. Just kind of go in and pop the bubbles. Or lift them off if I can't get them to pop. Also gonna come in and fix, there's gaps here and here. It's kind of hard for me to see where I've got the Glossy Accents from the angle I'm looking at it. All right, let's do the other set of balloons. And just be careful if you're spreading it out to not swirl too hard, because that'll put bubbles in. But you can drag it a little bit. To fill in completely. All right, again, I'm gonna bring it up to my face so I can see. Oh, I did much better that time with not getting bubbles, but there's a little bit over here that's not filled in. There we go. So I'll come back and show you what it looks like once the Glossy Accents are completely dry, and so you can see how that looks. But that is our card. All right, so our Glossy Accents and our Stickles are all dry, and I'm gonna give you a nice little close-up view of the card. You can see all the little details. So that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please do all the things that lets YouTube know you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave me a comment down below. Thanks for joining me, and happy crafting.